So we have our bank in downtown Boston that's robbed. The robbers are trying to escape by helicopter. They make 3 successive flights. One of them is 32 kilometers, 45 degrees south of east. The next one is 53 kilometers, 26 degrees north of west. Finally, 26 kilometers, 18 degrees south of east, east of south. At the end of the third flight, they're captured. How far and in what direction from the bank were they caught? So we're looking for a magnitude, how far, and an angle, what direction. So if we were to sketch this, we call this vector A, for example. Vector A, 32 kilometers, 45 degrees south of east. There's vector A. If we draw in the components, you have to go right and down to start and end in the same place as this vector. This angle here is 45 degrees. So to get the x component, since it's adjacent, x will be the 32 kilometers times the cosine of 45 degrees, which ends up being 22.63 kilometers. I recommend keeping a few decimal places as you work through the problem and wait till the end to round. The y component is negative. You had to go down. The y component will be the 32 kilometers times the sine of 45 degrees. So the y component will be negative 22.63 kilometers. So we have our first leg of the trip, so 32 kilometers, 45 degrees south of east. So our x component's 22.63 kilometers, 32 cosine 45. Y component's negative because it's down, so negative 22.63 kilometers. So here's vector A. Questions on getting vector A? Okay, the next leg of our trip. Next leg of the trip starts here. It's 53 kilometers long at an angle of 26 degrees north of west. However long that takes us. So it's 53 kilometers long. We had to go left and up in terms of our components. So our x component is going to be negative. Our y component will be positive. This angle is 26 degrees. So the x component will be 53 kilometers times the cosine of 26 degrees, and it's negative. So it's negative 47.64 kilometers. The y component is the opposite side, so it will be 53 kilometers times the sine of 26, which is 23.23 kilometers. So vector B is negative 47.64 kilometers, I hat, plus 23.23 kilometers, j hat. So first leg of our trip, second leg of our trip, last leg of our trip we'll do next. Questions on getting this second vector, the x and y components? Okay. Last leg is 26 kilometers, 18 degrees east of south. So we're starting where the second leg ended. "26 kilometers at an angle of 18 degrees east of south." Now that one's kind of hard to see over the other drawing, so I'm going to redraw it over here. So 26 kilometers We have to go down and to the right. Our angle is 18 degrees. The x component. Notice this time the x component is opposite the 18 degrees. So the x component will be 26 kilometers times the sine of 18 degrees. That's 8.03 kilometers. It's positive because it's to the right. The y component will be 26 kilometers times the cosine of 18 degrees, but it's down, so it will be negative. So negative 24.73 kilometers. So the third leg of our trip, 8.03 kilometers, I hat, minus 24.73 kilometers, j hat. Questions? Okay. Where we end up overall, well, where the robbers end up overall, depends upon the sum of these three legs. So A plus B plus C is our total position, where we end up. So we get negative 16.98 kilometers in the x direction, and negative 24.13 kilometers in the y direction. To draw it on our picture over here, this was our original starting point. That was the bank. The final ending point is right there. That's our final vector. Our final vector goes to the left, 16.98 kilometers, and down 24.13 kilometers. That's our total vector. Now this is the answer in vector notation, but that's not the question. The question wanted to know how far, so we need to find the hypotenuse, and in what direction, so we need to find an angle. To find the hypotenuse, we use the Pythagorean theorem, so 24.13 squared plus 16.98 squared, square root of that. Our hypotenuse ends up being 29.5 kilometers, or 30 kilometers. Either way is fine. Our angle, if we take the tangent of our angle, the tangent of our angle is the negative 24.13 over the negative 16.98. Theta is 55 degrees. But it's not okay to leave the answer as 55 degrees alone, stand alone. So either you need to add 180 to it and say the angle is 235 degrees, because whenever you just leave an angle by itself, it's always measured from the positive x-axis. Or, since the problem was given in terms of north, south, east, and west, we could write our angle in terms of north, south, east, and west. What would it be? 55 degrees south of west.
West.
Yes. So 55 degrees south of west would work. Or if you found the angle over here, you found it to be 35 degrees. 35 degrees west of south would work as well. So a couple ways to express the same answer. So it doesn't matter. If you told me 235, stand alone, that's fine. 55 degrees south of west is fine. 35 degrees west of south is fine. If you just said 55 degrees, period, then it's wrong, because that would imply the first quadrant.